You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke Makenna, but today's case is the Hollywood's first scandal, the death of Virginia Rappe. And it is beginning our Suspect Summer series here on my channel, where I post so much content in the months of June and July for summer. And so if you want to be a part of that, go ahead and subscribe down below. But this case is one that makes Hollywood nowadays, even with all of the rumors and gossip, look absolutely perfect, because the amount of press that would go into this crime, these trials, and the rumors surrounding this case was absolutely insane. It was one of the first Hollywood scandals to ever blow up, especially in the media, and this was 100 years ago, so it's quite the interesting case. And it also involves the first person to ever be blacklisted in Hollywood. So if you're ready to listen to that, then let's get into the story. Virginia Caroline Rappe was born on July 7th of 1985, and she was born to an unwed mother who would actually end up passing when Virginia was only 11 years old. After that, she would be raised by her grandmother, and by the age of 14, she already was going into commercial and art modeling. She knew the kind of the career and the path she wanted to go in life. Eventually, though, she would know that she needed to move to another place to go further in this career, and that's when she chose San Francisco. So in 1916, when Virginia was 21, she did that very thing, and she ended up meeting a man named Robert Moskowitz when she was in San Francisco, who was a dress designer. They quickly hit it off and were soon actually engaged to be married, but unfortunately before they could be, Robert was killed in a streetcar accident. This completely changed Virginia's way of living, of course, but also thinking, and she decided to kind of have a new start in Los Angeles. So she packed up and she moved to what was then referred to as Hollywoodland. Virginia was a beautiful brunette young woman who would come in contact with many men in the industry who wanted to help such a stunning lady who just wanted her career to begin. And one of those men would be a man named Makenna, who was the head of Keystone Studios, and he would initially help her get on the lot and put her on sets to get into these environments where she could get actual jobs. In 1970, Virginia actually hadn't been in Los Angeles very long, but director Fred Bolshofer actually offered her a role in Paradise Garden, and this was her first major role. That led to Virginia being cast in Fantasy, Joey Loses a Sweetheart, and Over the Rhine. For Over the Rhine, Virginia won an award for Best Dressed Girl in Pictures, and this put her on the radar for many people, but especially a man named William Fox. He was the founder of Fox Film Corporation, one of the biggest and up-and-coming production companies at the time, and William wanted to sign Virginia to be in the next feature film at Fox. By 1919, Virginia was dating a producer and director named Henry Lerman, who would have her basically star in all of his movies, including his musical Sneeze, A Twilight Baby, Punch of the Irish, and A Game Lady. The two were said to actually be engaged for a bit, but by 1920, Virginia was then dating a man named Jack White, who was another director, but he would soon move away to New York, leaving her behind in Los Angeles. But Virginia's career was up and coming. She was really budding as an actress, and basically everyone wanted her or knew of her at least, but a party would change everything for Virginia. You see, Virginia was invited to many different parties, especially by directors and producers who just wanted to socialize with her, and being an actress, being in the entertainment industry, you wanted to go and meet as many people as possible. It's just like today. And so when director Fred Fishback offered her an invite to a party for Labor Day weekend in 1921, Virginia, of course, went. It was September 5th, 1921, and it was at the St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco. Now, Fred Fishback was also with a man named Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle. Yes, that is what they called him. He was an actor, and so this actor and director duo, they also had another friend with them. They were all staying at this hotel. You see, Roscoe, Fred, and then their friend, who was Loau Sherman, they all had drove up to San Francisco from Los Angeles to kind of get away from all of the work they'd been doing there and just have a good time that Labor Day weekend. And of course, Fred invited Virginia because she was an actress and they all knew her. Fred, in fact, was said to have worked with her on a certain project. At the St. Francis Hotel, they ended up getting rooms 1219, 1220, and 1221, and the party would be in the middle room, which was Fred Fishback's room. There are mixed stories about who actually decided to have this party, who invited everybody, but most people say that it was Fred Fishback. And that Roscoe, who was sleeping next door in 1219, was actually awoken by this party at around 3 p.m. that day and decided to head on over because he heard the party and wanted to join. He was that type of guy and just wanted to go over there and join, even though he didn't even put anything on. He was still in his pajamas when he walked over. He headed to the party to check it out, but because he was still in his pajamas, he went back to his room after a little while to put on a proper party tuxedo. But what he didn't know was that in the room that the party was in, there was actually no bathroom, and in Lowell's room of 1221, there was an occupied bathroom because Lowell had taken a woman in there and locked the door, and so that left no bathroom beside his, where a woman had gone because she was very, very drunk. But Roscoe allegedly said he did not know anything about this, and he walked in to put his party tuxedo on and found Virginia in the bathroom, throwing up uncontrollably and saying that she couldn't breathe. Roscoe claimed that at this point he picked her up and put her on the bed in the room so he could go into the bathroom and change into this tuxedo. He thought she was just drunk and was just placing her there to just kind of put her in a safe place. But allegedly, when Roscoe was changing, he heard her begin to scream from the other room, and she began tearing off her clothes and screaming uncontrollably. He didn't know what was wrong. She was in pain, and so he went and got her ice and placed it on her leg. But unfortunately, she would end up passing 4 days later. There was actually a hotel doctor that came in that day and said that she was just drunk, that was it, she was fine. But on September 9th, she died of a ruptured bladder and secondary peritonitis. Now, this doesn't seem too scandalous, right? The story I told you seems pretty accurate and, just like a strange death that wouldn't cause any sort of media or press to go crazy. But that's until you hear what a woman who attended the party with Virginia would come forward saying about what actually happened that night. This was a 28-year-old dress designer named Maud Delmont, and she would actually go to the San Francisco Police Department and press charges against Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle for rape and the death of Virginia Rappe. Maud said she had just met Virginia a few days earlier, but she had attended the party with her. And that night she heard screaming coming from the room, and when she kicked the door in, she found Virginia on the bed with Roscoe kind of over her smiling. And allegedly, Virginia began screaming at Roscoe to stay away from her and then screamed to Maud that he had done it, but didn't elaborate on what it was. And Maud was the only one who came forward with this story or any sort of allegations like this at all. But this allegation was enough to cause an uproar in Hollywood because Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle was not just one of the many actors. He was a very successful actor at the time and was starring in major movies. He was known for his comedy and his big stature, but also his ability to do his own stunts and to do very crazy things. He had amazing comedic timing and everyone really loved him. They named him Fatty as almost a a comedy type thing, but it did of course affect him having that name, but people loved him for it, so he went by it. But after this, the public's view would completely change of him, because after the party, Roscoe went home, went back to LA, and didn't seem in the public's eyes like he even cared that this woman at the party had ended up dying or that was sick or anything. But he in fact wasn't said to have known anything about it other than what had happened at the party. However, all of these stories were coming to light, but the public didn't know who Maud Delmont really was. But the police did, and she had 50 counts of extortion, bigamy, fraud, racketeering on her record, and was known for blackmailing people. Her story would be told several different times to several different people, and Maud could never keep it straight. At one point she said she had known Virginia for a very long time, and another she would say she had just met her a few days prior. Everything would change, I mean, quite drastically. But one of the most frustrating parts of this case is when the investigators started looking into it, they couldn't really do a proper autopsy on her body, because after she had died, an illegal post-mortem exam was done on her body where they actually took her organs and put them in jars and basically ruined any evidence that could have been found. With this investigation beginning, Roscoe was actually summoned back to San Francisco. He was in LA trying to do press for opening weekend of his new film Gasoline Guns, and they summoned him back, which he agreed to do. They didn't have to force him back or anything like that. He agreed, but this just fueled the fire, and the press began saying things like Roscoe sought an orgy death and digging up things about his past, and saying that that night that he either crushed her with his weight while he had sex with her, or he used a bottle to do so. Of course, after this, people were furious that Roscoe's new movie was still being shown everywhere due to these allegations, and people began going to theaters and actually ripping down screens or opening fire in the theater for anybody who was actually watching his movie, and he was just really not liked anymore in Hollywood. It was like a complete 180 in the public's eye. On September 11th of 1921, Roscoe was actually charged with murder, and this was even though no DNA evidence of his was found in her at all, and all of the stories that had been told about that night said that both of them had been clothed when everybody walked in. The investigators believed that he used some force to kill Virginia, and the judge decided to charge him with manslaughter but dismissed the rape charge. The first trial began November 14th with Roscoe pleading not guilty, and he would take the stand to do his testimony. He would also have evidence brought forward saying that Virginia, well, his defense would bring evidence forward saying that Virginia had chronic cystitis or bladder infections, and that she would often have horrible abdominal pain which would make her rip off her clothes. But the jury was deadlocked because one juror said that he was guilty until hell froze over. Of course, nobody else agreed. The next trial, Roscoe didn't go up and testify for himself. He didn't have a news statement. His defense just read the statement he had previously said, which almost made him look cold-hearted, like he didn't care about this trial enough to go up and say it all again. And this time he was deadlocked again in the end, but it was in favor of his conviction this time. Then it was a third trial on April 22nd, 1922, and after 3 hours that Roscoe went on the stand to answer any questions they had, they came back after 5 minutes of deliberation saying, "Acquittal is not enough for Roscoe Arbuckle. We feel a grave injustice has been done, and there was not the slightest proof to connect him in any way with the commission of any crime. We wish him success and hope that the American people will take the judgment of 14 men and women that Roscoe Arbuckle is entirely innocent and free of all blame." Unfortunately, by this point, Roscoe had already lost his home, his money, and his Paramount contract. And originally, when all of this started, Paramount had hired a lawyer for him and had paid for it all to try to keep their star in the best light, but after believing that he was guilty and things not looking like it was going to go in his favor, they dropped all of that and dropped him completely. And then Virginia actually did have an autopsy done, and something they found was a tear in her bladder, which can often come from a botched abortion. And many people at the party actually said she was talking about an abortion that night. Many people also said that she suffered from a venereal disease, and they were willing to come forward and testify that in court, making Roscoe look better, but Roscoe wouldn't let them testify, saying that he was not going to talk bad about the dead. Now even a free, innocent man, Roscoe Arbuckle would be blacklisted from Hollywood, basically be the first person blacklisted from Hollywood, and it would take him 10 years to find work again. He was then offered a contract by New York Vitaphone Studios for a short film, and this short film was so successful because he was a brilliant actor and so incredibly funny that he was then offered a contract for 5 more short films that would be in preparation for a feature film with Warner Brothers. Unfortunately, on June 29th of 1934, the same day that those short films were all wrapped, finished filming, Roscoe Arbuckle actually died in his sleep of a heart attack. But he had just said that day that it was the best day of his life. Now, Virginia was buried at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and people say that they can actually feel a presence around her grave. There's an icy stillness about it, and you can almost hear weeping sounds and see an apparition of a weeping woman. And now, some still do believe that Roscoe killed Virginia, but people who look into it now have said that they really believe that he was an innocent man. And something that wasn't really talked about a lot was that there was some men who came forward about Maud Delmotte herself, who already had a horrible reputation, and they said that Maud would accompany young women to parties, and she would get them to seduce these rich men, these famous men, and then she would tell them that if they didn't give them money, they would go to the police with rape charges, which is exactly what Maud ended up doing to Roscoe after Virginia had died. So was this somehow part of her plan, or did Virginia unfortunately pass away due to health problems on her own, and Maud took advantage of this? We don't know why Virginia died, how she died, if it was just health problems, or if it was foul play. And I hate to even talk about theories here, because if Roscoe did assault her and then kill her and got away with such a monstrous crime, then I'm completely sickened by that. But also, if he would have gone to jail for something that he really had no idea what was going on and he was trying to help her in that moment, then that would also be horrific. He already lost a lot because of the trial and the allegations. But it's just hard to say, especially when it was coming from a woman who is known for her lies. But most importantly, the most frustrating thing is that Virginia did pass away. It wasn't like these were some allegations for a woman who is still standing and could say her own side of the story and could, say what actually happened to her. I just think that these allegations were very, very serious, and the fact that Maud could have been doing this for her own personal gain just really, really irks me, because there are so many times when allegations like this need to have serious repercussions. And in a way, I am thankful that Hollywood was very ahead of their time in this case as far as blacklisting him and saying that they want nothing to do with it. The public, didn't want to see his movies. That was brilliant. Reading about that and knowing that the public supported the fact that this woman could have been assaulted and killed and no longer wanted to support this man because of that. I seriously applaud all those people who were very ahead of their time in their thinking and wanted to keep this man accountable, even though he was such a famous celebrity back then, which is something we even struggle to do today. I'm not sure that I believe Roscoe did anything, but the fact that Maud would take it into her own hands, not to help her friend, but to use it as kind of power for herself and to get things like money out of these people. But of course, she also could have been telling the truth and was trying to help out Virginia. So it's a really hard one to know what side to take and who to be more angry at in this scenario, but I'd love to hear your theories about it down below. Of course, be very respectful and don't bash anyone for their opinions. I know this can be a very controversial subject, but also, do you think that it was a botched abortion? She was known to be a party girl and just kind of have fun, and there were speculation that she had had previous abortions and this one possibly just went wrong for her. But I am absolutely obsessed with these old Hollywood cases, so if you want more, you can recommend any down below because I think they're my absolute favorite. But don't ever forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay, bye.